Hello, my art-loving friends. I am Deborah Kaye, and I welcome you to Paint with a Passion. Today we're going to paint this beautiful, unbelievably easy marble mandala. Here is my recipe. You can pause here to gather what you need, or refer to the list in the description area below this video. Get all your goodies together, and let's make the magic happen as we paint with a passion. Let's run through what you're going to need real quick. Wood disc, sandpaper, the gesso and the brush, all of our paints that we're going to need, stippling brush, fine lining brush, the nylon brush for the varnish, dotting tools, and you'll want to grab some metal ones too, the little round ones. If you don't have dotting tools, you can find other things to use. I'll talk about it in the video. You're going to need a stencil and a chalk pencil and an eraser. I recommend the white erasers. Water cup with a lid if you have cats. And that's it. Let's get painting. I'm using a 6-inch wooden circle cutout. You can use anything you want as your canvas. Bigger, smaller, round or square, wood or stone, canvas, whatever you like. And I just use an old nail buffer to remove any of the rough spots. Okay, so when you're painting on anything that's porous, I recommend you always use a gesso primer. It keeps your paint from soaking into the wood or whatever porous surface that you're painting on. You can get canvases that are pre-primed, or you can prime your own. Just remember to prime all the areas that you're going to paint on. And the bigger the area, the bigger the brush, and a little goes a long way. I like to use a coarse brush when I'm applying it because it covers easier. Also, the bristle type brush helps to create a wood-like texture if you're going to apply a thick coat of gesso. You can also add a little bit of paint to tint your gesso if you don't want a white base. Super handy tip. I use a Lazy Susan to easily rotate my pieces while painting. Okay, so we're going to use a technique called stippling to create the faux marble background. It's a fun word. Say it with me now. Stippling. Stippling, stippling, stippling. Hey, hun, what you doing? Not now, dear. I'm stippling. All right, so let's do it. You want a palette that allows you to put 3 blobs of paint right next to each other. And if you don't have a palette with a big enough flat surface, just use an old plastic container lid or a paper plate. Start with a small amount and then add more if needed. Remember, a little goes a long way. You can buy stippling brushes, but personally, I find I get better results with a wide, semi-flat makeup brush for this particular background because it delivers splotches and actually does do a little bit of blending at the same time. So what you want to do is lightly dab straight up and down and all around the canvas. Be careful not to apply too much pressure because this is going to cause the paint to overblend into a big murky mess. If this happens, give it a few minutes to set and then just start again. And if you don't like a spot, come back to it and dab over it again. I'm using black, purple, and turquoise, but you can use any combination of colors that you want. I recommend you test it out on a piece of cardboard first until you get the color combo that you want. If you use gold or silver metallic to outline the mandala, just know that the darker background colors, they're going to show it off better. You might decide to do a lighter background and outline in a dark metallic. Maybe you don't even like metallic. It doesn't matter. This is art, people, so anything goes. Whatever colors you choose, it will be gorgeous when you finish. I always paint the backside, unless it's a framed canvas or a natural rock. And often I include a personal message or I sign the back, especially if the back's going to be visible, like it's on a display stand. It's nice for it to have a pretty backside, like I used to have when I was younger. Did I just say that? Okay. So this is my largest stencil. Stencils are awesome. They make it super easy to find the center of your canvas and to set your markers. For this design, I'm going to mark the center and use every one of the lines that fits within the edges of my disc. I use a chalk pencil because I find it hard to erase regular lead pencil marks. And trying to touch up a background that's not a solid standard color is just a hassle. I've tried all kinds of pencil sharpeners, even the ones that are supposed to be specially for chalk. Pish! Tosh! Is all I can say. Every single one breaks my lead off. So I go old school and I use a knife to sharpen it. I used a quarter to trace the solid inner circle. And I'm marking off every other line to make it easy to know where my next petal goes. Now we're going to start drawing the petals of our design. And I find it easiest to do one row at a time all the way around. So beginning small and then increasing in size and changing up the shape for each row as you go. You can make any shape you want, just make sure that the petals of each row start and end at the same marker distance. Does that even make sense? I think it does. Okay, so a little bit more about stencils. I bought a pack of 3 and they are widely available online or in craft stores. And the thing is, rulers and compasses are great, but finding the center of my canvas is so much easier with a stencil. Each stencil has a different amount of grid lines, so they seem to work for just about all of my marker needs. Another fun tip I have for you is about your water cup. I recommend that you use something that has a lid on it if you have cats or squirrels. Yes, squirrels. I actually have a friend who has a pet squirrel, for real. Anyways, I have 2 very curious cats, and one of them will try to knock it over, and the other one just wants to drink the water when I'm not looking. So unless I'm actively using it and have a brush or a sponge in it, I keep my lid on it. And every time I walk away, I try to remember to put that lid on that cup. Because, well, you know, cats. You say cats and that's really all you have to say, right? There's nothing worse than a puking cat. So, unlidded. Is that a new word? Maybe I should apply for a job at Webster. Anyways, moving right along, on to the last row. So this row I'm adding is different because it's not touching the row before it. It's what I call a floater. Did I just say that? I did. As you can see, I do make boo-boos, so being able to erase that chalk pencil is awesome. The stenciling for this project does take some time, but it is so worth it, and it's so pretty when you're all finished. So take your time, get your markers set, get your petals drawn in, and get ready to start outlining the mandala design. Alrighty, it's time to start outlining our mandala design. I'm using metallic gold, but like I said, you can choose any color you want. The fine lining brush I'm using is custom made, and I have 2 that I use. There's one that's curved and one that's straight. You can watch my video to learn how to create your own. I find that the curved brush works much better for outlining circles and curved lines, and the straight one works best for, well, you guessed it, straight lines, especially things like block lettering, squares, etc. So when I'm painting the outline of the design, I like to rest the side of my hand to steady my paint stroke and let my fingers just do the rest of the work. I paint a lot like I'm holding a pencil, and I find I have much more control if I don't use an easel. If you don't have a surface to rest your hand on, try resting the side of your hand on the back of your other hand. I like to start from the inner row and complete the entire row before moving on to the next. And this way I don't accidentally rest my hand on wet paint. Also, I spin my piece counterclockwise so that the wet paint doesn't pass under the hand that I'm painting with. And if you're left-handed, then you'll want to spin it the other way. As you can see, this is where a Lazy Susan comes in super duper handy. The Lazy Susan I'm using was less than $10, and it's just a 10-inch plastic turning Lazy Susan that's used for laptops or in cabinet cases or whatever. And it sponges off really easy. I don't submerge it just so that the ball bearings don't get rusted inside. I have no idea what it's built out of, but this thing works great. Let's talk about petal shapes. So, where do you get ideas for picking a shape for the petals of each row? Nature is a great place to look and find ideas. Go outside, take a look at flowers, take a look at leaves. You can get really cool ideas just from the plants that are out in your own yard or at the park where you go walking. Inspiration for other petals could be things like shapes that you're used to seeing in everyday life. Things like hearts and diamonds and triangles and other geometric shapes. The possibilities are endless. Sometimes I just start doodling and I'm absolutely surprised by what I just make up as I go. This is a lot of outlining all at one time, and your hand can get tired. So make sure to take a break if your fingers are starting to get stiff or not cooperating with you. And that's why I always recommend that you just use a little paint at a time and keep pouring more as you go. The acrylic paint tends to dry pretty quick. And the type of palettes I tend to use have multiple little holders so that you can just move on to the next one and pour another small little amount. And when you've used it up, or if there's some in there that dries up, then you can just move to the next slot and keep on it going. You might want to try practicing your outlining on a piece of old cardboard. Get familiar with the brushes that you've made. Get familiar with the width of each brush stroke so you know what you're going to be working with. Another great tip is to keep Q-tips on hand. That way, if a line goes awry before it dries, you can easily wet the end of a Q-tip and wipe it up. If the Q-tip's too wide or too bulbous at the end, you can always tear off a little bit of the cotton and wet it and smush it down, and then use it to wipe up any lines or anything that you wish to erase. All right, my art-loving friends, we're getting to the end of this outlining and we're getting ready to put the pedal to the metal. So let's get ready to do some petal details. Look at this gorgeous outline, people. It's already like just wow. All right, let's start the petal details, starting with the innermost row of petals and then working around that same row. Just repeat whatever design you pick on each row. So my first row is going to be thin curved stripes. It almost kind of looks like a bee's butt. Did I just say that? I did. Bee's butt. Anyways, make sure your paint is still quite fluid. And if it's dried out at all, you're going to want to pour some fresh paint onto your palette. And I recommend occasionally cleaning off your brush. Just make sure that it's dry before you get going again. For this next row, I'm going to use a small round metal balled dotting tool to create a swoosh. Dot the paint once, then dot on top of your dot a second time and drag it in a small tail. As you drag, ease up on the pressure until your dotting tool is no longer touching the canvas. You may need to reload and dot a second time before you drag the tail down. If you have not used this technique before, you're probably going to want to practice this first. Make sure to wipe off the dotting tools often in between applications because the paint can get really gunky. Is that a word? Gunky. Now that you've got this technique down, apply it along this whole row. 2 swooshes and a dot. My next row is going to be what I like to call V lines. I like to do one side of the petal and then the other meeting up at the center. Continue this for the entire row. And that's what I'm going with. But again, you can do any design you wish. That's the beauty of art. One of a kind and everything is your choice. You can fill in with whatever design you like. You can add lines, dots, swooshes, and any other shape you can think of. You could even repeat the same pattern through the whole thing and have one big bee's butt. This next row, I'm going to put dots, big to small. If you don't have dotting tools, you can use either side of a pencil. You can use the handle of your paintbrush. You can use toothpicks. You could use a chopstick. The last row, the floater row. For this, I'm going to do slanted lines. I begin with a V at the tip of the petal and then add diagonal lines on each side to fill it in. Try to keep them somewhat even, but remember, we're not going for perfection here. If we wanted perfection, then I guess we'd be doing computer design graphics, right? The beauty of handmade custom art is what makes this so special. Make sure you keep checking the consistency of your paint and that you clean off your brush periodically so there's no gunky buildup. And this is a design that could be used for just about any canvas. You can make ornaments with holiday colors, get patriotic and make 4th of July decorations, find a gigantic rock and completely rock it out. You can even paint a square canvas with multiple mandala flowers. I mean, the possibilities are just endless. And as you gain experience in details with the fine little paintbrushes, you could even do necklace pendants or maybe even some keychain pendants. I decided to go back and add some elongated S shapes on the side of each of the large dots. Again, using the curved fine lining brush I made, it makes it so much easier to make this shape. All right, my lovely art friends, it's time to complete the center circle. I find just doing a small amount at a time is the easiest way to complete a fine line circle. Paint just a little way, then reload your brush and continue. Whenever you're continuing a line, whether it's curved or straight, always touch down a little way back over the top of where you left off. Trying to continue the line after or next to where you left off will leave a junction spot instead of a smooth continuation. To finish off the design, I decided to add a bunch of random dots to the center. You can paint it in solid or use any design that you want. Once all the dots are completely dry, it's time to erase all the chalk lines. I recommend using a white eraser always. That doesn't leave any traces or any residue like the orange eraser heads do on the regular lead pencils. And make sure you get all of the chalk because once you seal it, it's too late. It's time to seal our mandala. The varnish I'm using is for indoor use. And once you've coated it, take a look at it from different angles under the light to find any spots you might have missed. Make sure that you let everything dry completely. Overnight is usually my rule of thumb, but make sure all of your dots are completely set and all of your chalk lines have been erased. Wow, does that make it pop or what? This marble mandala is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today to Paint with a Passion. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to painting together real soon. So please remember to subscribe and set a reminder so you will know when I post a new video. I wish you peace, love, and happiness now and always.